Hey guys, the bathrobe is on again, so you know what time it is. It's late night real talk time. As is often the case, I find myself once again tonight unable to sleep with too much on my mind. So of course, the only rational thing to do at a time like this is to make a YouTube video in my bathrobe. My choice of topic tonight is Fuji's Classic Chrome profile, and the reason it's been on my mind lately is because within the last 2 weeks, I've released 2 videos comparing Fuji colors to other brands, and in both cases, Fuji's Classic Chrome profile shot straight out of camera in JPEG was compared to other brands' JPEG formats. What I find interesting is how polarizing that was for folks. As I look over the comments, it seems that people either really loved it or really disliked it, with the numbers largely skewing towards dislike. Some said it appeared too cool, too sterile, or too bland. Even many Fuji shooters expressed that they were shocked at how little they actually selected Classic Chrome in the blind test, preferring Provia. Now, my first knee-jerk reaction to that data is that the shots I showed in that blind test, many of them at least, are probably not shots best suited for Classic Chrome. So I hope people don't read too much into that data and decide never to shoot with Classic Chrome again. Or maybe I do, because the fewer of you that shoot in Classic Chrome, the more unique my photos will appear, because for me it really is my profile of choice in most circumstances that I shoot in. So there's a few things I want to unpack a bit regarding Classic Chrome. The first is I want to try to describe it, and that's partly for myself. I'd like to describe why it's so unique among so many other color choices used in the photographic community. I'll use my own photos as examples as we talk about it. If we're to study Classic Chrome and how it's different than default raw output, here in Capture One, I'll point out that most obvious changes. People tend to cite the blues and the reds the most, but it's actually in the brown tones that I see a huge difference. While many of the colors become more subdued, the brown tones actually become more saturated, darker, and cooler. This gives Classic Chrome a bit of a cool, earthy base to the shadows where brown is present. When we look at the blue tones, we see some slight desaturation, but also a shift towards cyan. In fact, it's usually the skies that most quickly give away that a shot was processed using Classic Chrome. In the reds, we see a clear step towards the orange side of things, and between the shifting of the reds and the blues, it's caused many a critic to dismiss Classic Chrome as nothing more than a teal-orange color treatment gimmick that you see so overdone in do-it-yourself video color treatments by YouTubers, travel vloggers, videographers, otherwise known as coffee B-rollographers. But to me, this slight cyan and red to orange in Classic Chrome is tastefully done. It's subdued and elegant, not brazen and in your face. When we get to skin tones, here's where I see a bit of inconsistency though, and that's because in the pinks, as well as the oranges in the midtones, they're extremely desaturated. But conversely, the browns, while definitely cooler, they're deepened and darkened, as I mentioned before. What this means is that pasty white folks like me and my kids are gonna look unnaturally pale, whereas those with darker skin will tend to curve darker and become cooler, but there is no loss in saturation. Different pigments will get drastically different treatments in this profile. And this leads me to my personal conclusion of what Classic Chrome is good for and what it's not. And I personally don't feel like it's a very good portrait profile. No shocker here. Most of you will be like, duh, that was never the purpose of Classic Chrome. But in my bathrobe, I feel entitled to state the obvious. So having said that, if you personally love what Classic Chrome gives you in portraiture or whatever you shoot, do your thing and don't let the expectations of me or others keep you from doing things the way you like. But to me, what this profile is good for, maybe even perfect for, is what it was created to be. Many claim that Classic Chrome is Fuji's Kodachrome. Personally, I have zero experience with Kodachrome, but I've seen this debated by folks who were intimately familiar with Kodachrome enough to cause me to doubt it a little bit. Maybe it's a nod towards Kodachrome, maybe. Either way, they are completely different mediums and so different worlds. Film versus digital, I mean. So it hardly warrants an argument and certainly not a flame war over. And really it doesn't matter, but I will say this, Classic Chrome and Fuji in general leans cooler than other brands. And certainly Fuji as film, the film Fuji color science is far cooler in tones than Kodak film has ever been. For Classic Chrome to be like Kodachrome, I think you've got to warm things up a bit to compensate for that. But also when I see Kodachrome photos, I really see rich and saturated reds, which I don't see in classic chrome, but I'm no color scientist. These are just my impressions, and we'll never really know for sure because we can't test them side by side. Either way, Kodachrome was well known for its documentary photography qualities, but when the old-timers say that, I don't think it was first and foremost because of the color palette. I think it's clear it was because of the archival properties that it had. But as a result, that film got used by many prolific documentary photographers and sort of established a name for itself there. So with classic chrome being maybe a nod towards that film, most people assume this is a great profile for documentary style photography, and I tend to agree. And this is where we get to the part that I get excited about, because my true love as a documentary photographer is black and white photography. To me, that art form is so special for several reasons, most especially because you gain inherent consistency, but even more importantly, it forces the story and the conversation to be about shapes, contrast, and story. It takes color out of the equation and makes it simpler to derive meaning from a photo. But sometimes you just have to shoot in color. Maybe it's because, like me, you may shoot events and your clients are not going to be happy if you deliver the photos all in stark velvety acros. I mean, it'd be cool if they were happy with that, but none of mine would like that. So for me, classic chrome is my choice because it really is the black and white of color photography. The colors are understated and subdued, causing the subject matter and composition to take the front seat. But at the same time, the colors are changed enough from what you'd expect to see that it remains interesting. For me, I really love this profile, and it is one of the things that keeps me shooting Fuji. I find myself so excited after getting a shot I know is a keeper to get back home, to look at the computer, and to look at those tones in detail. And often I find myself wishing I could easily duplicate that experience when I'm shooting in other camera brands. I will, in fact, admit to spending an inordinate amount of time trying to build my own Sony, Canon, and Panasonic classic chrome profile, failing miserably in most cases, probably because I just suck at color. I'm always left slightly disappointed. But as I mentioned before, personally, I'm never gonna use classic chrome in a portrait shoot, and certainly not in product, architecture, or most landscape shooting, because in those situations, a lot of those real life colors are more important. But for most other styles of photography, it remains my favorite pick, and part of me is actually quite happy that so many people found it off-putting in my color comparison videos, because maybe that'll mean less overall saturation of folks shooting with it, and maybe mine can stand out just a little bit more. Realistically not, but one could dream. But those are all my thoughts on classic chrome. Honestly, I never would have thought I'd dedicate a whole video on a filmic profile, but hopefully you enjoyed it or were able to use it as a sleep aid at least. Speaking of sleep, it is time for me to get mine. Remember, kindness before cameras, and we'll talk to you again real soon.